This is what's actually happening under your plants when ants move in, and why the fix costs less than a coffee. This video breaks down exactly how ants damage a garden, separates the myths from the real science, and walks through the cheapest, most effective way to stop it. By the end, you'll know whether the ants in your garden are actually a problem, and exactly what to do about it if they are. Most gardeners assume ants are eating their plants, and that assumption is wrong. Common garden ants mostly don't strip leaves or feed directly on roots at all. What they actually do is tunnel through soil, and that tunneling aerates it, letting moisture and oxygen reach plant roots that would otherwise struggle. They also speed up the decomposition of dead plant matter, which feeds the soil, and some species even kill off caterpillars that would chew through your leaves given the chance. So, if ants aren't the villain everyone assumes they are, why does this video exist? Because the real damage was never about ants eating your garden. It's about who they bring with them. Here's the mechanism that actually wrecks a garden. Ants farm aphids, and that relationship is where almost all the damage starts. Aphids are small insects, sometimes called green fly or black fly, that drain the sap out of leaves and stems and can spread plant viruses while they're at it. Spring through late summer is when they're most active, clustering on the undersides of leaves where they're easy to miss until the damage is already visible. Ants and aphids need each other, which is good news for them and terrible news for your garden. The ants herd the aphids together on a plant, release chemicals through their feet to keep them calm and controlled, and then stroke their abdomens to coax out a sugary secretion called honeydew. In return, the ants fight off predators like ladybugs, and they'll physically carry the aphids to a juicier patch of the plant or move the whole operation to a fresh plant, just to keep the honeydew coming. Yellowing leaves, sooty mold, stunted growth. That's what this farming operation leaves behind. If you've ever spotted a plant with a black sooty film across its leaves, that's mold feeding on aphid honeydew, and it's a dead giveaway that ants have been running an aphid colony right under your nose. This is the reason ants take the blame for garden destruction, even though it's rarely the ants doing the damage directly. It's the aphid farm they're protecting. Ants aren't always innocent though, and there are a couple of situations where the damage really is coming from them directly. Nest building disturbs the soil around plant roots, and ants drag that excavated dirt up to the surface, where it can bury low-growing plants outright. Containers and pots take the worst of it since there's so little room to begin with, and roots in that confined space get disturbed enough that the whole plant starts wilting faster, especially once it's already dry. Inside a pot specifically, ant tunnels open up air pockets that let water run straight through, instead of soaking in the way it should, and losing potting mix out the bottom of the container becomes a regular occurrence. Large colonies take this further still, weakening root systems outright once the tunneling reaches a certain scale, container or no container. Then there's the species problem. Some ants are just built to cause more damage than others. Fire ants go after seeds and young plants directly, tunneling through root systems or feeding on buds and seeds in a way that can genuinely wreck a vegetable garden. Leafcutter ants go even further, physically stripping large pieces of leaf from a plant and leaving it visibly torn apart. To put fire ants in perspective, they've infested more than 300 million acres across the southern United States, and the USDA puts the yearly cost of the damage and control efforts somewhere between $6 billion and over $8 billion. That figure covers households, agriculture, and infrastructure, not just backyard gardens. But it makes one thing clear. Once the wrong species shows up, this stops being a minor nuisance and turns into something genuinely expensive. So here's the real picture. Ordinary garden ants are mostly harmless on their own, and the trouble starts the moment they're farming aphids on your plants, nesting directly inside a root zone or container, or belonging to a more destructive species like fire ants or leafcutters. Now, for the part you've been waiting for, the actual fix, and it costs next to nothing. Mix a small amount of mild dish soap into a spray bottle of water, shake it well, and spray it straight onto the ants and wherever they're getting in. This works on two fronts at once. First, the soapy water sticks to the ants and suffocates them on contact. Second, and this is the part most people never realize, it washes away the pheromone trail the ants leave behind. Ants navigate using that scent trail, so wiping it out makes it much harder for the rest of the colony to find their way back to the same spot, or to the aphids they were farming there. You can spray this straight onto the plant itself, without hurting it, which makes it one of the safer options if you've got kids or pets running around the yard. It won't solve everything in one shot, and you'll likely need to reapply it after rain or a heavy watering, but for the price of a small bottle of dish soap, it hits both problems at once. The ants themselves and the trail system pulling more of them back in. If dish soap alone isn't enough, there are two proven next steps that still don't require calling in a professional. Diatomaceous earth, or DE, is the step up in effectiveness. It's a powder made from fossilized diatoms, and instead of poisoning ants, it kills them. Mechanically, the fine particles cling to an ant's exoskeleton and dry it out from the outside in. Most ants exposed to it are dead within about 24 hours. Make sure it's food grade, not pool grade, since the pool version is chemically treated and can cause harm if inhaled. A single bag runs somewhere between $10 and $20, but that one bag can treat an entire yard, which still makes it one of the cheapest options once you break it down per treatment. The trade-off is patience, since DE isn't instant and can take days, sometimes weeks, to clear a colony out completely. Bait stations work differently, going after the colony instead of the individual ants you can see. Worker ants carry the bait straight back to the nest, wiping out a much larger share of the population than spraying visible ants ever could, and fewer ants defending the aphids means aphid numbers start dropping on their own. Not every home remedy floating around actually works either. Cornmeal gets repeated constantly as a fix, but the science behind it is shaky at best, so it shouldn't be your only line of defense. Ants in your garden aren't automatically a disaster. Most of the time, they're aerating your soil and picking off other pests without you noticing. The real damage traces back to one of three things every time: an aphid colony they're actively farming, a root zone or container they've nested inside, or a more aggressive species like fire ants doing direct harm. Once you know which one you're actually dealing with, fixing it doesn't have to cost anything close to what pest control charges. A dish soap spray costing next to nothing handles both the ants and the trail, bringing more of them back. And if that's not enough, diatomaceous earth and targeted bait stations give you a next move, all without a single invoice. The $2 fix isn't a gimmick. It's the same principle the pest control companies are charging you for minus the bill.